That's what I'm talking about.
Wait! Okay, now, from the beginning.
Welcome to BS, Beyond Stereotypes, a podcast about lawyers using their authentic voices to change the world.
My motto that I try to live by is to set audacious goals, but celebrate incremental victories. So
Awesome.
folks, so if you that feeling of being trapped and you don't know what to do, set the goal, set the intention, but also show some grace to yourself and just know that everything is going to be okay. Everything's going to work out, and celebrate the little things too, the step by step. The steps taken that will ultimately get you to where you want to be.
Welcome to BS, Beyond Stereotypes. I'm your host, Merle Vaughn. Here to BS with me today is my friend, Eric Burton, whose story I find fascinating and who will no doubt inspire all of you to embrace your authenticity. Hey, Eric, how are you?
Hi, Merle. I'm great.
Thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We've been trying to get this together for a while now. I'm glad the stars finally aligned.
Yes. Yeah. I know when we first spoke a couple months ago, I was right in the middle of our season 2 of USFL, which is Fox's spring football league, professional football league. And so my schedule has been quite crazy. But now that we're after a season, things have settled down a little bit.
Okay, so let me tell the audience a little bit about you. I was stalking you online this morning, and you're not that easy to dig up stuff on, so you're going to have to tell us stuff yourself. But Eric is the Vice President of Business and Legal Affairs at Fox Sports Media Group. He's been with them for 14 years. Prior to that, Eric was a director for about 3 years at Fox Cable Network. Prior to that, Eric was an associate for 5.5 years at Morrison Foerster, affectionately known as MoFo. Eric attended UCLA Law School and went to Stanford undergrad. Did I miss anything, Eric?
That's it. You captured me pretty good.
I know that there's one thing that's missing, and that is how you left MoFo. And I happen to know because I placed you out of MoFo for a very short stint in-house, and then you moved on to Fox. But one of the things that I like to start out by giving you an opportunity to kind of, give us an idea of what your story is. Like, what has your journey been? Where did you grow up? How did you grow up? Who helped you believe in yourself? Who helped you along this journey to becoming who you are, where you are? So if you don't mind, I'm going to give you the floor to give us an idea of what that looks like.
Sure. So picture this, 1975. I grew up in Oxnard, born and raised in Oxnard, California. It's about an hour north of LA. Middle class, working class parents, very multicultural neighborhood. So I like to talk about Oxnard. I'm very proud of where I'm from. My family's still there. Folks still living in the same house that they've had since 1970. And I love the fact that I'm from Oxnard and the fact that it's such a diverse city and town. So I grew up with all kinds of different communities and, friends of all different backgrounds and races. And I feel like that has really, been a great privilege to be from Oxnard and to have that sort of place to grow up, because it really sort of shaped my worldview and my comfort around lots of different types of folks. Was a sort of shy, effeminate, overweight kid.
Really?
Yeah, so that was, I think that kind of also shapes kind of my childhood. So, and so I sort of escaped, I didn't fit like the mold. A little bit about my dad, who was a Vietnam vet, very like a man's man, like a tough guy. And so like I was his first son. So I have two younger brothers, so oldest of three. And I didn't really fit into, that sort of athletic sports. So I sort of retreated into books. So I was, that shy kid that was very, found escape through reading and books. And I was sort of a self-motivated sort of academic kid. So, and I think that sort of kind of shaped my childhood, and got to high school and was very active, and did everything. I was in the band, I was on a dance team, president of my school. And so through a lot of hard work and academics, I got accepted at Stanford and went there, and then law school after that. And and then my life began as a lawyer some 20 years ago. I can't believe how fast time flies.
I
So
know,
that's
right?
a quick nutshell about my
Okay.
journey. I'm sure there's a lot to fill in there, so I'll let you sort of.
Yeah, well, I said really because you said you're overweight, and it's funny how that is not something that I would have expected to hear from you, but being what you self-described as effeminate and overweight, that did you get bullied in school, or what, were you just happened to be in a place where nobody was, you didn't have bullies?
I was very fortunate. I wasn't really bullied, although teased, I guess. But I always had a very strong connection to who I was, even though I was very shy and reserved, and also just very confident
Hmm.
still. So, I think that sort of protected me, um, growing up.
Where do you think that confidence came from?
I don't know. I was always just really like there was something in me and my mom tells a story. I don't remember it, but she tells a story about how I was at my grandma's house one day, and firemen came because there was some issue next door, and I was 3 or 4, and the fireman was talking to my grandmother and said, "Oh, hey, little guy, don't you want to be a fireman when you grow up?" And I said, "No, I want to be a lawyer." And I don't know where that came from. I had a very my grandma I had my other grandmother, who sadly passed away when I was 3. I think she would, you know, read to me and, fill my head with all kinds of things. She would call me little Master Eric. So maybe that sort of like subconsciously, like, you know, gave me some internal tools in order to sort of navigate life. But yeah, I just always had like a very sort of disciplined, sort of motivational. I was, very academically inclined. So I think I just sort of just ran with it.
And so, back to the self-described effeminate, and the fact that you had a very man's father, the guest, just for our guest edification, you are an openly gay man, and I'm just wondering, when did you figure that out, and when did your father figure that out?
Yeah. So coming out was a journey for me. So I think that it's sort of I wasn't out until after college. So
Okay.
yeah, so I didn't come out until law school actually. So that was the tough, it was tough sort of feeling like I didn't really fit in to the sort of expectation of what it meant to be a man, and then to be a Black man, and to have so much academic promise. So like
Right.
everyone sort of like, it was very clear from as a child, that I was gonna go on to do great things, like, and get a professional career and all that. And so I think I internalized a lot of those expectations, even though my dad was a man's man. He wasn't homophobic or anything, but I sort of put on expectations onto myself based on what I
Right.
thought he wanted. So I didn't feel comfortable enough to come out until, until adulthood. And now that looking back, I sort of put a lot of things on myself unnecessarily. I love my dad, and we have an awesome relationship, and he's super supportive. But yeah, it was quite the journey. But I'm blessed to have had both of my parents who instilled, core values, honesty, hard work, discipline, taking care of family, community, and those things. And those were the primary drivers, and sort of helped me sort of navigate sort of the the course of coming out, which I think was difficult. But once I came out to my family, that was a hard part.
Hmm.
Professionally, it hasn't been like I've not had any sort of reservations or hesitancy or anything like that about being out and open in terms of my professional career.
So when you're looking at law firms out of law school, was that something that was top of mind for you? Were you, like researching the firm or the partners or the other lawyers to feel, find some place that you thought would be accepting and where you would feel like you belong, or had you like walked that uh, for so long that it didn't really matter because you were confident enough to be successful anywhere?
Yeah, I think that, and before law school, I took a year off in between college and law school, and I worked for Morrison and Foerster, the firm that I ultimately ended up working um, for. In San Francisco as a paralegal for a year. So I knew that Morrison and Foerster was a great firm for many reasons, but one of them was it was very progressive. And I think at the time they had an openly gay managing partner. So it was a factor, but like I said, I was pretty confident in terms of my sexuality professionally. So I didn't feel um, I didn't feel like constrained or in any way when I was looking for law firms, and I wanted to work in LA, so most of the firms that I looked at, I all had great reputations, but I think in terms of being open, I didn't perceive that to ever really be an issue.
Do you remember if the managing partner was Keith Wetmore?
Yes, that's who it was.
Because Keith is a recruiter with us now.
Oh, that's amazing.
So yeah, we'll have to give a shout out to Keith on the when we post this.
Absolutely, and I'm sure he doesn't remember me, I'm sure, but it would he was like his presence, and you never know who's looking at you, and all the people who you may never know or meet, but he had a great influence just in terms of his visibility and his representation.
Right. That's amazing.
Mhm.
It's a small world. So, okay, so you become a lawyer. You decided three that you're gonna be a lawyer.
I think that was
You
what, again, my grandmother's doing. And also, I should also say that as a kid, LA Law was on during the 80s,
right.
and Blair Underwood's character on that show also uh, was a sort of a guiding sort of thing to aspire to. So, we talk
Interesting.
about like media and like representation of
Representation.
different
Yeah.
folks. It does matter, because as a young kid seeing a black lawyer on TV, it made it all seem um, all the more possible.
Yeah. So you go to like go to law, you go to a great undergrad, you go to law school, you come out, you go to a great uh, firm, and as I recall, you wanted to be a transactional lawyer, but that was during the time when there nobody could be a transactional lawyer. The economy had gone to hell, and you ended up being an environmental lawyer, right?
Yes.
Talk to
Uh,
us about that.
right. So I I sort of thought that I would be an entertainment lawyer. So that was sort of
Okay.
like one of my early sort of goals. And when I was a summer associate at MoFo, and this is like 99, 2000, came out, got an offer, and then they had us at the time, MoFo had a very small entertainment practice group, which was very competitive, and everyone wanted to do that work, and it just they didn't have there wasn't enough work to take me on. So I had two options: to join the litigation group or to join the environmental group. And I knew I didn't want to be a litigator. And
Hmm.
environmental group, although it was a practice area that I really wasn't interested in, it at least had it was a hybrid practice group that did both litigation and transactional real estate matters and some regulatory things. So I thought that it was, for my skill set purposes, the the better of the two options. So that's how I decided to work in environmental law.
And so was there a final like uh it's something that happened 5.5 years into it where you just said, okay, I need to do something, I need to go in house, I need to make this move, or did I just call you out of the blue? I mean, I don't remember how that happened.
Yeah. So I the decision to join the environmental group was the right one at the time, but probably a year into it, I realized that I didn't. It's hard to it's challenging to practice law at that level if you even when you love the underlying like content of the
Right.
matter you're doing, but it's especially hard when you're just not that into it. I was even though it was a hybrid practice, the majority of the work was on the litigation side, and what I was doing was defense side environmental work, so defending companies involved in groundwater contamination cases, violations of the Clean Air Act, Clean Water Act. I just wasn't into it, and I worked primarily with one partner who I just did not see eye to eye with. We just had different working styles. I became unhappy pretty quickly, probably after about a year. And so by year two, I knew I wanted to leave. And so I actually started looking to go in house after year two. It took me 3+ years before I met you, first of all, and then the right sort of um, avenue to sort of make my grand exit happen. But I was actually pretty unhappy for the majority of my time at MoFo. Not, the firm was great, but I wasn't doing the work that I really wanted to do. I wasn't passionate about it. I had a difficult working relationship with the partner, so I was sort of really ready to leave. And actually, that year five, I remember being so frustrated and being I was driving home after a really hard day, and I can't remember what had happened, but I was just sort of disheartened by just my life. I had worked my whole life and studied and done the right thing and been so disciplined and went to schools and got all this great opportunity, but I was desperately unhappy. And none of the in-house sort of interviews. I'd gone on a ton of interviews and gotten really close, like 2 or 3 times, different studios in town, and it just didn't work out for me. And so I remember driving home one night and just like pulling over and like just bawling, just started crying
Hmm.
because I just felt so frustrated by my life professionally. And I just decided like I just had, Eric, you have to make this happen. This is a do or die moment. So I just sort of changed I just knew I had to make it happen. And I set that vibration for myself.
Love
And
that.
within, a month's time, I ended up meeting a person that worked at Fox, who that's how I eventually made it to Fox. But shortly after that, I ended up meeting you. And so that sort of things happened pretty quickly after I decided to sort of set my new vibration and to take control, right?
Right.
So we feel like we don't have control, but we actually do if we are bold enough to sort of to set the right intention and to just to take risks.
I love that you went there because we were kind of in the same place at the same time, and I had just started recruiting, and I also had recently started practicing Buddhism, and so it was very much about setting intentions and vibrations and all that. And recruiting was hard. It was a very hard thing to do, and I'll never forget. And I think I've told you this before. You were my first candidate. You were the first person to agree to like have coffee with me. and and we were just kind of, I guess we needed each other at that time, even though I did not place you at Fox. Um, I was like kind of your biggest cheerleader, I think.
Yeah.
And so it's funny how we when you put stuff in the universe, you can find it, what you need can find you.
Absolutely. And since that time, which is now 20 no 15 16 years ago, I've sort of led with that, sort of setting the intention, being very clear and specific about what I'm asking the universe for, and then making moves to achieve that. And that's been a great sort of turning point for me, both personally and professionally, because a lot of things sort of fell into place after I sort of changed my vibrational tuning.
And so, this is a great conversation for especially not even just young lawyers, but any lawyer who kind of feels stuck, right? And feels like, well, I started this, I have to finish it, or who is afraid of what might happen if they make a move. It's, what advice would you give people who are feeling stuck?
Yeah, everything is in transit. Like there's no sticking unless you're yourself there, right? So I think the setting your vibration in terms of like wanting to make that change, it's frustrating because I think we place a lot of external factors, and we give up control to a certain extent. But when you really have clarity of thought and intention, and just believe in yourself and believe in that. For me, it was the hardest part was like trying to figure out like what I really wanted to do. But once you figure that out, know and trust that the universe will deliver to you what you are asking for if you are willing, if you are clear about what you're wanting and willing to put in the work to get there.
Right, because everything it all really is kind of an illusion, right? It's all what, it exists, but you can transfer, your existence to where you actually want to be. Boy, we're really going over we're getting out of the realm of our legal practice and getting into vibrations. And I
Yeah.
love that. I mean, I could tell you stories about how, I just, I once read this book. I was in a really bad place, and I started reading this book called Excuse Me, Your Life is Waiting. And I
Yeah.
couldn't figure out how I was gonna at the time gonna get my daughter. I had no money, I was in a bad place, and my daughter really wanted to go to the sleepaway camp. And I read the first 3 chapters of this book and I put it down and I just said, I'm gonna make this happen. And within 2 hours, I did. And that's when I really came to believe that you really can set intentions and vibrations if you're willing to take action,
Yes.
um, and just have confidence. And I mean, and that goes back to what you said about your young self. You were just confident. I mean, when you just said I had to figure out what I wanted to do, I was taking notes, and you said you were in a band, you were on the dance team, you had confidence, you wanted to be an entertainment lawyer. You've been setting this intention all
Yes.
your life. It just sounds like maybe you forgot what it was.
Yeah, and also feel like you know, you graduate and you have there's all this expectations, and so I placed limitations on where I thought I could go based on things not happening in the way that I thought that they would, right? So like my whole life was a series of decisions and hard work in order to, like, there was a roadmap, right? You study
Right.
hard and you take this exams and you get into school and then you work hard and you get good grades and then you take the LSAT and then you get into law school and then you get a certain grade and then you can interview with these firms. It's very structured. It's very sort of like the pathway is there. But I was on a path that it was established, but it was leading me to a place that I didn't really, because I wasn't clear. I just knew I wanted to be a lawyer. I knew I wanted to be an entertainment lawyer. The entertainment law piece didn't happen for me right away. And so while I felt like I got stuck because I was afraid to like step outside of that established path, going the firm route. It's different now because I think the industry has changed so much that, when I came out of law school, you couldn't just jump into in-house. You couldn't just go work for an entertainment company. I felt like you had to work at a firm to get, your training and experience. Today, I think that there's so many more sort of platforms and services, and the technology has changed so much. I feel like the opportunities are a lot broader. But in terms of like blazing a path, like that's the part that I felt like I've had to sort of evolve myself into being bold enough to sort of step outside of those established pathways that we're very comfortable. I think as lawyers, I feel like we tend to be, risk averse, and we tend to like, we can rule, we have follow the rules and the procedures and step by step to get to a certain place. But we need to be clear about that place that we're trying to get to. And I wasn't that clear. And it wasn't until I sort of sharpened my focus that those things started to happen for me in the way that I was wanting.
So, okay, so you wanted to be an entertainment lawyer. I was telling you earlier, I sometimes I stalk you on Facebook and I see you doing a lot of fun things, going to a lot of great concerts and music and stuff like that. I have yet to see you at a sporting event. And, and so talk to us about sports as entertainment and how the two of those intersect, and you know how that satisfies your need to be an entertainment lawyer.
Yeah, so me in sports. So like I said, growing up, I was like not athletic at all. I had this athletic dad and who watched sports all the time. So I was always around it, but just wasn't that into it. And my idea of becoming an entertainment lawyer, in my mind, I thought that meant, representing talent or working on, script developments and the traditional like entertainment stuff. And that's kind of where I had my focus. And when I was interviewing at different studios, it was those types of jobs that I was looking for. How the Fox Sports opportunity came my way was I was at a holiday party. This was probably in 2005, 2006. And I met a nice lady at this holiday party, and she was asking me about what I did, and I was telling her, I'm a lawyer, I'm an environmental lawyer, I'm really unhappy. And she said, well, I'm really good friends with the woman who heads Fox Sports's legal team. Would you be interested? And even though, sports wasn't really my thing, at that point I was like, yes, like and so that's kind of how the opportunity sort of came my way. And it turned out to be a blessing in disguise, even though I'm not a sports person. I'm working in sports media, and on a transactional basis. And it just turned out to be like the sports industry is just such a dynamic, fast-moving place. And it's still television, and it's still talent. You're working with talent, you're still working on production. So a lot of the same types of work that I thought I wanted to do on the traditional entertainment side, I'm now involved with just on the sports side. And hindsight, I'm like, it's the best thing that could have happened to me, because I really do enjoy what I'm doing now. And that's part of the reason why I've been at Fox for this number of years. It's due to the opportunities that the sports provides at the deal making level too. So I'm spent the first part of my time at Fox working supporting the regional sports networks. So those were the networks across the country that had deals with the local sports teams, NBA, NBA, and NHL. So negotiating telecast rights deals became sort of like my bread and butter the first part of my career, and sort of it's evolved and changed. I felt like I've had probably 3 or 4 different jobs, because the sports media business is always shifting and changing. So the opportunities sort of feels like a never-ending stream of opportunities that I've been able to sort of ride that wave, doing what I'm doing. So, and you're right. I work in sports. That's my life all day long. So if you're stalking me on social media, you're not gonna see me at a game. You're gonna see me at a concert, because I love music. Little side note is I talked about being in a band. I played the saxophone, being on a dance team. I sort of thought that I would want to do something on the creative side too. I was in a dance troupe in college, and I was sang in a choir, and so I thought, maybe. And I did some acting, so I thought maybe this is, like, I could do this. But when it really came down to it, it's like, okay, I my parents have helped took a second on their house.
Oh, wow.
To Stanford, I can't go and go on, try to be a singer or something like that.
Well, and if you had become an actor, you'd be on strike right now with my daughter. She's a writer, and she's in SAG and WGA, and it's not looking pretty these days.
No, yeah, it's not a good situation right now. I feel for those folks.
Does that affect you guys at all?
Not really on the sports side, no. That's one of the things. I mean, sports is a lot, kind of free from that. So we've had a few, like, I remember when I first started, we had the last big strike, which was like in 2007, 2008. And sports and reality TV sort of like, and news were the things that were sort of unaffected by the union issues. but I do feel on a personal level, just for the writers and the actors who are just trying to, make a living in a fair way, um, in the challenges of the industry and the change from the traditional linear TV to the streaming services and technology and all that stuff. We got to figure out a way to fairly compensate people.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
and what now, one of the issues, the big issues for the strikers is AI. Are you finding that AI is something that's creeping into sports as well?
A little bit, but it hasn't, not to the level that it's become a material piece, but it's something that we have our eye on.
So what would you like if there's a lawyer out there who's, either someone who's in law school about to come out, and they kind of want to pursue a similar path to you, or somebody who's at a firm and wants to get out like you did. What advice would you give to, kind of what do you need? Is there a certain skill set that you guys look for when you hire folks at studios, or kind of what is the profile of someone who's coming into to your industry now?
So I, I, it's really like it's personality, but you go to school, you go to law school, I think people come out generally with, the same set of skills.
Hmm.
I think it's more like self-driven. Like what do you want to do in terms of where you want to take your career, and what's your plan to get there? So I'm very like, it's very case by case, right? Everybody's different. But I feel like having that clarity of thought about what you want to do is like the main part. I mean, like I think once you establish that, I feel like that's where most of the work is. So people that are sort of self motivated and disciplined and just interested, business, it's really it's skill set, but it's also like, how do you interact with people,
Hmm.
and what are, and having interpersonal skills and having people like you. I've seen this in my career where, you can be the best lawyer or the best business person or the person with the best ideas, but if you don't know how to have people like you, at a certain level, if it's, or by
Hmm.
establishing relationships. And that's one thing that I didn't do enough of earlier in my career was getting out there and networking.
Hmm.
I was not like a natural like networker. I was more like just get your, roll up your sleeves and do the work, and then things will happen. But if you can do that, but unless you are sort of putting yourself out there and letting people know who you are and what you can do and what you're capable of, um, you won't be as successful as you could be. And so back to your question about how to, people who want to like get into going in house or working in entertainment or into sports, I would just say get out there and meet people. I'm like, I think I started earlier saying, I was a shy sort of reserved person. I'm still that person. So it's not, it takes some extra effort for me
Right.
to sort of to network and to go up to someone and strike up a conversation, or to reach out to someone if they're doing something cool and I think that I want to know more about that, or I want to learn how to do what they do. Like I'm getting better at it, but it's taken me a long time. I wish I would have been better at it earlier. Maybe it wouldn't have taken me 6 years to leave Mofo if I had
Well,
been better at networking myself and not feeling like it was like a, if I did great work, that something would magically happen. Like, I had
Right.
to be proactive and assertive and take control over my own life and career, and I think the coming out part of it, through my adolescence and coming out after college, that was sort of taking control over my own life, and not letting the society or the world dictate to me my worth or my value. Working as a gay Black man in a corporate environment, like I've been successful and I show up as my authentic self, and I think that is also one of the reasons why I've had the level of success that I've had thus far. It's that authenticity and that sort of self-knowing that you are good, you're worthy, you're just as smart, just as capable, and we deserve to be in these places.
Right. So that's a perfect segue. And I was going to say, we are here to BS about getting beyond stereotypes and also being true to our authentic self. So thank you for giving me that segue. What stereotypes do you feel people make about you, and why? And how accurate are they?
So stereotypes. I remember when I got accepted into Stanford years ago. The assumption was, oh, you're an athlete, even though you could look at the time, you could look at me and like I wasn't an athlete at all. I remember I was an escort for a debutante ball. I never forget this. And I was at this little cocktail reception, and I was super excited, and I just got into Stanford, and it was like, it's great. And so someone was asking me about it, and the lady was like, oh, was this a football scholarship, or and that was the first, and I was just like, what? This is just, because in my mind I was just, I hadn't never thought that would be the assumption. But then it happened to me quite a lot, and so that was sort of my first sort of like, okay, like people are thinking that I'm not, the reason why I'm got into Stanford was because I was a football player or affirmative action or something like that. And so I just feel like from there I was like, oh, the world may see me and make assumptions about who I am just based on a set of preconceived notions, right? But as I've gotten older, I've sort of figured out that to not let that to not really think about that.
Well, and good for you. I mean, that and we could do a whole podcast on affirmative action, right? Based on what's going on in our country right now, and what that means, and whether or not what the effect of rolling that back is going to be. I mean, my position is, I've made my position really clear, which is, anybody who has had any modicum of success at all has received some kind of affirmative help, whether it's been someone who meets you at a cocktail party and says, I like you, I should introduce you to someone, or whether it's a counselor that tells you about some program that you apply to, or whether it's a partner in a law firm who, gives you good work.
Right.
All of that is affirmative help. And this idea that only people who look like us, from underrepresented demographic groups are getting help is ridiculous.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. And as I've evolved from those early days till, going to the law firm and, people assuming you're riding in the elevator and they look at you, they think you're in the mailroom or something like that. And I remember there was this one time where I was there in the elevator and some lawyers from opposing counsel on another thing were in that same elevator, and they looked at me and probably just assumed, oh, this is a person that not, but actually was like they were discussing matters that they would not have been discussing had they known that I was actually a practicing lawyer at the time. So it's little things like that that sort of over the years sort of shape your sort of awareness that those external things are out there. But I've rejected them. I don't think about them. You talk about like the privilege. Like people don't like to talk. We all have some amount of privilege, right?
Yes.
And the idea of the discussion of it is not to make someone feel guilty or like feel like you have to give that up, but you need to recognize that the privilege, and by pretending like you don't have advantages, and that you've gotten everything because of your smarts or your hard work. I challenge that. And we all are here through a set of circumstances. I know I'm here through hard work, but I'm also here because I had privileges. I had parents who owned a home who could take out a second on it to help put me through school. That in my mind, that's a privilege. Not everybody had that. And so I'm always I sort of have an attitude of gratitude is something that I try to, on a daily basis, really think about, and sort of surround myself with this being fully appreciative of the privileges that I've had and the opportunities that come my way, and in turn try to give back and do what I can to help other people.
And that was going to be my next question, because recognizing your privilege is almost like the first step, right? Is you recognize your privilege, and like you said, we all have them. What you do with that is what to me determines your life. It determines whether or not you can look yourself in the mirror,
Yes.
and feel good about what you're doing and what you've done. And you said that you like to give back. What kind of things do you like to do?
I love working with people. So I have mentored people over the years. I really believe in Black entrepreneurship. So I'm right now I'm helping out a Black startup, content creators, on the entertainment and like tech space. I've always made like pro bono work a part of what my practice. So I've continued pro bono matters throughout the years, but primarily I love to mentor people, and younger folks, in terms of using my own sort of journey, and how I sort of got here. I feel like those sort of like personal connections and relationships have been vital. I know there are people who have helped me along the way, and I was always grateful for that sort of guidance, and it's really fulfilling to me to be able to help other people in that way.
So we're almost out of time. I was just wondering, there's, and I alluded to this earlier, there's so much going on right now that could negatively affect folks like you, folks like me,
Yes.
my kids, my grandkids, and it's exhausting. At least for me, it's exhausting to think about it. It's exhausting to talk about it. You can't give up because the people who came before us didn't give up. But so what are your thoughts on how you continue to be your authentic self despite the obstacles that people are trying to throw in your way.
Yeah, I mean, we're living in a tough time, I think. And for me, as a person who lives for and thrives to evolve, to progress, right? To have greater understanding of who I am, but also like where we are as as a world and as a society. And the idea of going backwards, to me, it makes me almost nauseous, right? So
Yeah.
and I was a poli sci major in undergrad. I love politics, but for the past few years, it's been such a toxic mix of things. I've actually had to pull back my sort of my focus on the politics has sort of been adjusted downward, just because the time and attention I was focusing on these issues, but feeling powerless to do anything about it, you know. And so I've sort of been doing a more self-reflection and sort of just been more inwardly focused, and then and surrounding myself with friends and family members to help me sort of navigate what's going on. But you know, everything is local for me. So in terms of like feeling powerless to fix things, you know, I think that's also not like the right sort of way. I have to quickly pivot out of that feeling of powerlessness and sort of focus on the things that I can control, right? So there are little things that we all can do to try to make the world a better place and to not go backwards. But it's a tough time politically, and when you sort of think about how far we've come, we have to keep progressing, and I'm optimistic that we're gonna get there. But currently I don't see a lot of, for me, value in focusing on like politics like I had previously. I'm more focused on like what can I do in my personal life, in my professional life to have a positive impact. And so that's kind of how I've tried to figure things out.
Well, good for you. I think I'm there with you. And so okay, so one last question. Hopefully, we'll end on a fun note, which is, what concert are you going to next, and is it Beyonce?
I am going to Beyonce when yes. But I think there's a Sam Smith show. Actually, I'm going. That's right, back to back. So there's a Sam Smith show, and then there's a Beyonce show like the next night. This is at the end of August. So I think those are my next two concerts.
That's
yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's it. I was just I really love music, so that's my escapism is live music.
Well, at this point, I've watched the TikTok videos of Beyonce's daughter, Blue Ivy, on stage so many times.
Yeah.
I think I know that choreography.
I think I do too, Merle, on it, if I'm being honest.
I want you to take a video of it when they do that piece. I need you to send me a video of you doing that choreography. She's gotten a lot better, I might add. She's grown. Well, Eric, thank you so much for being here to BS with me today. It's been a lot of fun. I've learned things about you that I did not know, which is one of the reasons this is such a fun thing to do. And I think it will be, an episode that will resonate with a lot of folks who want to reinvent themselves in their legal career. And you're a perfect example of how to do that. So thank you for being here to BS with me today.
Well, thanks for having me. I'll leave with this sort of final thought about my motto that I try to live by is to set audacious goals, but celebrate incremental victories. So folks,
Awesome.
so if you that feeling of being trapped and you don't know what to do, like, set the goal, set the intention, but also like show some grace to yourself and just know that everything is going to be okay. Everything's going to work out. And celebrate the little things too, the step by step. The steps taken that will ultimately get you to where you want to be.
There you go. Everything happens when and how it's supposed to, just like this episode.
Great.
So thanks to everyone for listening. And until the next episode, remember that everybody is different and different is good.
Hit it! That's what I'm talking about. Wait! Okay, now, from the beginning.
We hope you enjoyed the stories shared in today's episode of BS, Beyond Stereotypes. Join us next time when another authentic personality unleashes their uniqueness on the world.